Hello, this is Brian Morris with the second installment of our video series providing an overview to our managed services partners hosting SUSE Linux enterprise images, which can include SLES and SLES for SAP applications on behalf of their tenants. Please note in the YouTube description for this video is the URL to the setup guide and the URL to the general RMT server installation guide located on the SUSE documentation site. The setup guide has been updated for /version 15 SP3 or higher. Today's video will focus on the basic install of the RMT server itself. We will be referring back to our diagram as a general reference frequently, while channel surfing to other pages as well as to demonstrate particular commands, their expected output, files generated, and other particulars. Now let's get started with the RMT server. In the environment I will be showing examples from, there are only 2 RMT servers as opposed to the 3 depicted in the diagram, both belonging to the PHX geographical zone, which is implied by the naming convention using the airport code of Phoenix as my region naming convention. My environment also demonstrates another important component, 2 region servers. While this is a workable option, it is recommended in a larger scale environment to have multiple region servers within each region, which will in turn be grouped together by configuration files. RMT and region server deployments can be installed on virtual or bare metal servers. Virtual servers are hypervisor agnostic. During the SLES installation for the RMT servers, complete these steps initially to reduce post-install. Register the SLES servers directly with the SUSE Customer Center is essential to facilitate timely product updates. It is important to ensure that you have properly configured the host name and fully qualified domain name in order for registration sharing between RMT servers to work. Use YAST to configure the Network Time Protocol or NTP if it was not pre-configured during initial install setup. It is recommended that you use the same NTP server across all your RMT servers within a given region. Why does that matter? Other than as simply a best practice, it is mandatory that the time is synced for the SSH handshake during registration sharing between RMT servers within the region. Now that should be enough to get you started on the initial RMT server build. Make sure you follow both the setup guide and the RMT server installation guide during your site build. Both of these guides have the URLs posted in the description of this video. At this point, you should have a functional SLES server with the clock being synchronized using an NTP server and the RMT server package installed, but not configured yet. Now, you're not done yet. The real fun's about to begin. If you didn't, by the way, manage to have the RMT server package installed previously, you can simply install it following the installation guide or via the YAST command. This will install the latest version of the RMT server package by default onto your RMT server. Before you start configuring RMT and mirroring products from SCC, let's go over some RMT server best practices. Let's take a look at where the repository will be physically stored. What tool you use to create the disk space for the repository is up to you. YAST is available in SLES or any tool you are familiar with. To create the repository disk space, the best practice is to use logical volume groups. This aids you in not over-allocating disk space for just-in-case possibilities. Rather, you can build an appropriately sized initial disk space and add logical space as growth dictates. The initial size will vary depending on how many SLES product repository versions you intend to mirror. The calculation is approximately 1.5 times the total size of all enabled repositories. For a fully enabled SLES server product version for a single architecture, that could equate to about 200 gigabytes, including all modules and extensions. Remember that the repositories may contain products for all SUSE supported versions. service packs, and architectures. Currently, that would include SLES 12 and SLES 15. The supported matrix is located under the Support tab on the SUSE.com homepage. For more specifics on creating the proper disk space and how it is utilized, refer to the setup guide. This brings up another best practice. Before sizing and populating the repository, plan properly. You will not just want to do a select all when it comes to populating repositories on a just-in-case premise due to space and network constraints. You will want to plan for, with as much forethought as possible, which products your tenants will be selecting for their purposes. You will save a lot of time in having to populate specific products on the fly and ensuring that all the associated RMT repositories are identically provisioned, or even worse, realizing at the 11th hour when the client is waiting that you need to add more repository disk space before you can even add the products. Bottom line, again, plan ahead. Once that is completed, you are ready to set up the RMT server. As outlined in the guide, you just utilize the yast space RMT command. Remember to obtain the organization credentials from your SEC partner portal prior to running YAST RMT. This is essentially an important step. I have displayed the screenshot from the setup guide itself to emphasize. These credentials are required during the initial RMT configuration. You might want to copy the password on your desktop somewhere for reference. Just remember to shred it later. As promised, the very first screen asks you for those organization credentials. As recommended for registration sharing in the setup guide, uncheck the bottom box to not forward systems to the SEC. It is checked by default. This is referring to the clients, not to the RMT server itself, and not to the region servers. Now let's just move on through the next few remaining screens. They're self-explanatory, so I will not include screenshots. When you arrive at this screen, ensure that the common name displays a fully qualified domain name as shown here and not just the short name. If your RMT server has other aliases that it may be referenced by, you may include them here as well, such as the short name. Now, move on through the next few screens. If all was successful to this point, this is the first of the last three screens that you will see in succession. Just wait on this screen to update while the services are being spun up. After a few seconds, you should see this screen. And then to this screen, showing the final configuration summary. This is the summary page. You may want to make a copy of it. Note the location of the files, etsyrmt.com, and of the cert files, etsy, rmt, ssl. Also of note is that my firewall is not enabled within my test lab, so it is disabled during RMT setup. Say next, and the YAST RMT configuration script will be completed and return you to your normal command prompt. Now you have built an RMT server and are ready for the next stage of enabling SLES products that will be mirrored locally. This is the end of the second video in the series. Thank you for watching.